It's 10. Well, numbers are building. If it is hang fire another 5 minutes, I'll see if we get anybody else. I'm going to record anyway, so all is not lost. Well, the recording says it's running, so I suppose that's a start for 10. Can you see a swarm? Oh, right. First of all, have I got audio? Can somebody give me a thumbs up, please? I can see Shalene and Linda. Anybody give me a thumbs up for audio? Possibly? Hopefully. Have I got audio, people? Can you hear me? Ah, brilliant. And also, can you give me a thumbs up if there is a swarm on your screen? No swarm on the screen. Oh, brilliant. That's excellently not. Right. I am screen sharing. New share. Let's try again.
Pete, we can see your file folder list, but we can't see the...
Okay, how about that? Can you see it now?
Yep, still showing your drive.
How's that?
That's it. Well done.
Right, we're in business. We are in business. Hopefully I'm going to be able to juggle this successfully. What's probably going to happen is we're going to run out of time, so when we run out of time we'll call it a day and we'll do the rest of this lecture next week. And I am recording as I speak, so we will have that up on YouTube as well. So, swarming. In a way, we've partially covered this already, in that you will remember possibly I was talking about queen substance and calling it a cake. And as the cake population of the colony grows, the slice of that cake gets sliced and diced thinner and thinner and thinner, until the bees on the sort of periphery of the activities tend not to get their fair share. They don't get their dose. Now then, what does the general public know about swarming? What do they know about bees? They know they sting, they know they swarm, and they know that they're a problem. You might have seen in the news, Air India had to postpone flights because their aircraft was covered in a swarm of bees. So they can cause considerable inconvenience to other people, and financial inconvenience as well. So as a beekeeper, they're not somebody else's problem, they're your problem. So there are umpteen different ways of dealing with swarming. Lots of people like to stick their names onto methods and try and get their little slice of fame. So before you try experimenting, learn one method of swarm control. I'm just swizzling my laptop round because no doubt you're fed up looking at sheep by now. So, what is swarming really all about? Well, it's dead simple, it's sex. And sex, thirst and hunger are the three main imperatives of existence. Some people have more powerful sexual urges, so do some bees, or strains of bee. You will get some colonies that will actually swarm themselves, so that to the extent that the parent colony is virtually dead. So don't underestimate it. And because it is such a powerful urge, you come across this phrase: swarm prevention. There's no such thing. It does not exist. Accept the fact that your bees will swarm at some point and learn how to deal with it, and more to the point, be prepared to deal with it, because it is unavoidable. And if somebody says to you, oh, I just knock out the queen cells and they settle down, they're talking absolute rubbish. They maybe knock out their queen cells, I'll give them that, but the bees don't settle down. What's actually happened is those bees have swarmed without that beekeeper knowing about it. Because trust me, they will swarm. Even if it means swarming on the basis of an egg in a cell, they will go. They can't help it. They have no choice. They are being driven. The urge to reproduce is very, very powerful. Now, some people will say, and I can't disagree actually, that the first sign of swarming is the arrival in the colony of drones. The big fella here with the big eyes. Worker in the middle, Queenie Poos is on the left. Somewhat stylized diagrams, mind you. So, the colony needs mature drones, and not necessarily their own, because this queen is the virgin queen will fly, as we discussed before. She will mate with up to 20 odd drones, and hopefully they're not from her own colony, because they want as diverse a genetic setup as they can achieve. So once the colony has decided it's going to swarm, they will go out and they will scout. They will look for a new home. They'll put the queen on a diet to slim her down so that she's fit enough to fly. And left to their own devices, they will cast, and again and again and again. Now, the first swarm to leave, we're assuming there's no human intervention here, this is just what would happen in nature. The first swarm will leave with the mated queen, leaving behind queen cells. The first virgin to emerge, there's two things that can happen. One is that she will be held captive by the workers, and when the workers decide, they will leave as a small swarm with the virgin. The other option is that the virgin will be allowed to sting the other queen cells and kill off potential rivals. She will then fly mate and head up the parent colony as their new queen. The casting, depending on how powerful the reproductive urge is in that strain of bee, after the first cast has gone, the next virgin to emerge, the same thing might happen again. The bees will hold her to stop her from stinging the other queen cells to death and cast again. This is what is meant here, this bottom line of text, cast and again and again and again. They can actually cast themselves, so you're left with quite literally a handful of bees in the colony. It's not common. I've never actually seen it myself, but it can happen. Now, excuse me, while we're talking about reproduction, aside from swarming, there is another outcome. It's called supersedure. And when I had my native bees, roughly speaking, 60% of my colonies superseded where the bees were on the heather. And the reason I know this is my queens were clipped and marked. So when you inspect in spring, and instead of a blue clipped queen, you've got a queen with no marking and she's not clipped, I can guarantee that they have superseded on the heather. Not swarmed, superseded. Because I had stacks of spare equipment on the site, and if I was having swarming, I'd have had at least one swarm take up residence in my spare kit. It didn't happen, therefore I'm pretty confident they were not swarming. How do you tell supersedure from swarming? And this is where it gets tricky. It's the number of cells, and that is a classic supersedure cell. That's a queen cell there, with a bee's bum just sticking out above it. And swarming would normally have a number of cells, probably, I'm just trying to find a slide I can quickly show you. There's 8 cells there. Now, I would say that colony is going to swarm. I would also say they're pretty close to starvation, actually. When you have 2 or 3 cells, you can be pretty sure it's going to be supersedure. When you've got 8 plus, you can also be fairly confident that it's going to be a supersedure situation. The trouble is, when you get 5 or 6, are they superseding or are they swarming? Well, to be honest, I would treat them as if they were going to swarm, because the outcome is going to be the same. You're going to end up with a new queen in your colony, which at the end of the day is what the bees want. And as said before, it's your job as a beekeeper to help the bees achieve what they want to achieve. So, treat swarming as an opportunity. The bees want to replace the queen. You want to have a nice new queen in your colony, and you want that on the basis you'll have a nice strong colony, and you know that it's very unlikely they will swarm again that season. Swarming normally, once it's occurred, the colony settles down and that's it for the year. So it's up to you to help the bees achieve what they want, and of course the bonus for you is once the swarming has been sorted out, you are sorted out as well. Now, part of the normal furniture, this is not the best of photographs, but is a queen cup, and that's this little structure waving the mouse round here. They're usually about the size of the tip of your pinky would probably fit into one. And people say, oh, I knocked them out. There's absolutely no point. All you're doing is annoying the bees, because all they're going to do, as soon as your back's turned and that crown bore's back at the colony, is they're going to rebuild. They like to have queen cups, and as the population grows, during an inspection you may well find an egg in a queen cup, and some people panic. Well, don't. That egg more than likely will be moved by the bees and popped into a worker cell and left to become a worker. The time where you need to put your ever so carefully prepared plan into place. This is actually a slightly better photograph of a queen cup. That's it there. Just sticking out slightly from the face of the comb, pointing downwards. It is an incipient queen cell, if you want to get technical. But people call them play cups, they call them queen cups. I call them queen cups mostly. But when you look at your next inspection and you have got a larvae in the queen cup, it is no longer a queen cup, it is now an open queen cell. And the growth rate of that larvae bathed in that royal jelly, which is the white substance you can see around the larvae, is equivalent to a newborn human baby becoming the size of a baby elephant in the space of 5 days. They grow at an extraordinary rate of knots. And the people that spend lots of time studying bees through in observation hives and what have you, these guys get up to 200 feeding visits an hour. And that's why there is so much royal jelly in that in that open queen cell. And it's at this point that you need to start putting your swarm preparations into action. Because once you have larvae in queen cells, you have got a colony that is saying loud and clear, I am going to swarm. So, in order for that open cell to happen, breakdown of communications, as in not enough dose of queen substance. Bernard Mobus used to talk about repletes, and his thinking was that the colony gets to a point where there are quite a large number of worker bees who are helping dry the honey, because there's usually a good honey flow on, nectar flow, when swarming starts. And these bees are hanging nectar into cells, they are moving nectar around, their honey stomachs are full, and when a worker who's just been attending the queen comes past and says basically, would you like your dose of queen substance, this bee is so full it's saying no, it doesn't want any more. And because it's refusing to take that sip of nectar from the bee that's full of queen substance, the whole communication of the queen substance breaks down. And the end result is you have, as is put here, charged cups, which is the queen cup with a larvae in it, or open queen cell, meaning exactly the same thing. It is the start of a queen cell with a larvae viable and ready to go. So, some years ago, I had an experience. Now bear with me, I'm going to show you two short videos. Runtime is about 4 minutes in total. Now hang on a second, because I need to change my screen share. Now, are you looking at a hive on your screens? Yo, thank you very much. Thanks, Leslie. Okay, here we go. I'm going to shut up because there's commentary, live commentary as it were. Somewhat breathless.
A piece of video of this because it's the noise I'm after as much.
Sorry, I'll need to rearrange the audio. Just a second. Clatter, clatter, bang. You come out of there. You go in there. Uh-oh. Right, if somebody, sorry about that delay, if somebody could give me a thumbs up if they can hear the audio, please.
I thought I'd take a piece of video of this because it's the noise I'm after as much as anything. This is very close investigation going on of a bait hive. You know, inside the hive there's, off the top of my head, I think it's 9 frames, about 6 would be drawn comb, 3 will be foundation, maybe a bit, or might be 1 more drawn comb, 1 less foundation. It's academic. 2 days ago we sprinkled lemongrass oil, quite profusely to be honest, over the top bars, not in any sort of systematic or measured way in any size, shape or form, just unscrewed the bottle, spliter, spliter, spliter. Now then, there's something in the region, all in all I would say 200 to 300 bees investigating this box. They're coming in and going out, coming in, going out non-stop. So I'm going to shut up for a minute, zoom in on the entrance and let you listen to the sound. This is not, to my knowledge anyway, an alive swarm. These are the scouts. See, they're checking round underneath. They're popping in, they're popping out. As somebody said in the forum, it's funny to see them with the little tape measures, but that actually is what they're doing. They're in there, they're measuring the cubic capacity in this box. It is a national. I've taken swarms in nationals before now. I would give them a druthers, I must admit, prefer a Langstroth, but hey, there you go. You use what you have. Right, I'll cut this off here, go and stick it up on YouTube and post the URL on the forum for you folks to have a laugh at my optimism.
Did the audio come through okay? Ah, brilliant. The next one comes under the heading of what happens next.
And after a little period of quietude,
Half an hour.
look at this. One swarm arriving.
I'm breathless going
Oh
around
yeah,
the camera.
dancer. Oh yes, 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 yes. Brilliant. Absolutely superb. You couldn't make this up. In fact, the other video is still uploaded to YouTube. Woo. Now, what you can do under these circumstances is get a water spray and spray the air. But to be honest, I don't think there's much point today. These guys know exactly where they're going. Listen to this sound. Now, I'm going to be having moved a whole bunch of objects, so I'm doing something else. Right, look at this. Look at this. Isn't that magnificent? Oh yes, there's nothing like getting something for nothing, isn't there? Right, I'm going to shut up and let you listen to the noise. Now, the lens is about 2 feet away from the entrance of the hive, and I'm being damn silly because I haven't even got a veil on. But they're piling in. Right, I'll keep you posted on what happens. I better go and upload this one now.
Right. Bear with me till I readjust everything. Oops. Sorry about that. Okay, so an arriving swarm is quite an impressive sight, and it's also to the general public a rather scary sight, and I think you can understand why. After all, you've got, pick a number, 25, 30,000 stinging bees flying in quite a big cloud. Yeah, it's intimidating if you're not a beekeeper. I once visited a gentleman who lived in the village of Stanley, just up from Perth on the A9, and my memory of it was a very, very neat and tidy and orderly village, except for one house which was dilapidated, to put it mildly, and in the garden, which was also dilapidated, to put it mildly, there were 40 hives buried in amongst weeds that were 6 foot high. And on the wall, this was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, late June, there were at least 20 swarms hanging on the wall. And I had no beekeeping equipment with me. There wasn't one container on the premises that didn't have a hole in it, so there was nothing I could do about all these swarms. And I said to the chap, I says, do you not worry about your neighbours and the swarms? He says, oh no, he says, if they complain, I just tell them they're nae from my hives. and And then he put the icing on the cake by saying he was the only beekeeper in the village. I mean, how far can you push your luck? It was just insane. So, as beekeepers, we have to bear in mind that what to us is either an absolutely wonderful event when it's somebody else's bees that are arriving free of charge, or they're our bees and you're really annoyed because you've lost the swarm. We need to bear in mind that we have to take swarm control seriously, because it can cause a great deal of hassle and expense and annoyance to other people. So, collecting swarms. Some people do this almost as a hobby. They list their names with the police, local councils, what have you. There are swarm collecting groups on Facebook. People alert each other to swarms being wherever they are. Swarms are, by their very nature, literally flighty. And I mean that in the sense that they are liable to take off and disappear at any point in time until about 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon, because if they haven't gone by that stage, they're planning spending the night. Why do they suddenly take off and go? Well, you saw the first video was the scouts measuring the bait hive. They were making sure it was a suitable premises for their good selves. And when you see a swarm hanging on a tree or a wall, don't think it's just sitting there doing nothing and twiddling its collective legs, because it's not. The scouts are out looking for that house, and at any minute they're going to come back, say to the rest of the girls, okay, we've found where we're going, we're off. Because not every swarm leaves the hive knowing where it's going to go. Some of them are just in such a sexual frenzy, they throw themselves out the door and they hang up, take breath, make sure they've got the queen with them, and then send out the scouts. Others are more measured, and sometimes you will see a swarm emerge and they will just set off for wherever it is they're going, because they already know where they are going. Now, I mentioned bait hives. I'll just say a bit more about that. The classic research on bait hives was done in the States, and they tried different size containers in different locations, and what they came up with as the preferred volume was 40 litres, and the preferred location was 15 to 20 feet up in the air. So obviously everybody tries to get a 40 litre container, otherwise known as a Langstroth brood box, sitting 15 feet up in the air. Well, you may have noticed in the video of the swarm arriving, they were piling into a national brood box which was sitting on the ground. So I have never hung a bait box up a tree, because apart from anything else, a pound of bees weighs start that one again. Bees are about 5,000 to the pound, so a decent sized swarm can weigh, up to 10 pounds. So you've got the weight, and then you've got the height to deal with, and then you've got the logistics of getting the thing up and down. It's to me, it's just a load of hassle. Plus, as I say, the research was done in the States, where the colonies are bigger, the temperatures are higher, and the climate is completely unlike ours. So, national brood box with a bit of lemongrass oil sprinkled in it, sheets of foundation in their frames, and you've got as good a chance of getting a swarm as I have. There's the long and the short of it. Lemongrass oil works an absolute treat. It really does. It mimics queen substance. So when you get that phone call saying I've got a swarm, you can either play it cool and wait for the evening, or you can have the mad dash and fly across to wherever it is with your swarm collecting equipment and hopefully pick it up. The way I collect swarms is as follows. I spread a sheet, white sheet, on the ground. I have a rusky with me, a skep, straw skep, and I usually find a stone on location, so I shake most of the bees, or as many as I can get my hands on, into the skep, sit it on the ground, propped up on the stone, and stand well back and wait. If you've got the queen in that first shake into the skep, the bees will crawl out, they will face the skep with their heads pointing up. They turn the tip of their abdomens up and they expose a little, almost looks yellow gland called the Nasimov gland, and they will fan backwards, and they're fanning out this Nasimov scent which tells the rest of the swarm, you know, yoo-hoo, we're here. This is where we are setting up shop. And the rest of the swarm will fly across and join them. Once you think you've got virtually as many as you can get, you lift the skep gently, take the stone out, let the skep settle, wrap it up in a sheet, and stick it in the back of your car, and off you go. That is how you collect a swarm. The first one I ever got, I was shadowing Bernard Mobus at Crepston. Phone rang, got a swarm. It was in West Cults, for those of you that know the Aberdeen area. I drove across. It was during Wimbledon, because I remember the guy telling me his wife had the curtains drawn and she was not going to be taken away from her Wimbledon for love nor money. She was hunkered down for 2 weeks. And this swarm had settled on the tip of a young apple tree. The apple tree minus the swarm was probably about 7 feet high. With the swarm, it was bent over like a U, and the swarm was standing, or rather the swarm was such. I had my rusky in my arm, like this. I took hold of the branch, which was here with the swarm. I manoeuvred the rusky underneath the swarm, and I went doink. And you know what? I had them wrapped up and away inside 40 minutes. It was unbelievable. I've never had another one like it. I think it was Mother Nature saying, I'll give you a nice easy one for your first go. Another instance was I got called out to Cooter on Royal Deeside for a swarm which was in a chimney. Now chimneys, if you think about it, tend to be, roughly speaking, 40 litres in volume, and they're quite often 15-20 feet in the air, so they're quite a common target for our friends the swarms. And it was a tenement block, and I arrived, got the binoculars out. Sure enough, there were bees flying around this chimney. And she said, can you get rid of them for me? I said, well, I'll try and smoke them out. So we lit a fire, because it was still an active fireplace. Lit a fire, put some grass cuttings on it, got a lovely dose of smoke going up, and lo and behold, it wasn't the chimney with the bees that the smoke was coming out of, was it? It was the neighbour's chimney. So I ended up saying, well, there's nothing I can do, because we knocked on the neighbour's door, but there was nobody home. And what the outcome of that was at the end of the day, I honestly don't know. I just I had to leave them to it. There are some swarms which are impossible to get, and there are people who get so excited about collecting swarms that they go to ridiculous lengths. You know, they go up really high ladders and poles and wave nets around and all sorts of nonsense. I mean, there's a point where you've just got to say to yourself, is it actually worth the risk to me to be absolutely stupid about what I'm doing? And I hope you've got the sense to say no, it's not. Some people think that bees should be rescued at all costs. I disagree. It's safety first. At the end of the day, what is a swarm of bees worth? Well, traditionally it was a swarm in May is a load of hay, a swarm in June is a silver spoon. If it's too much hassle, be realistic and say stuff it, let them go. So, let's have a look at how we are going to deal with our swarming colony. And the first thing is, you're going to need equipment. You're going to need a floor, a brood box, a crown board, and a roof for that swarm. Another option is to hive it in a nucleus box. Back in the day, all the nukes were 5 frame, more or less. Now you get 5 frame, 6 frame. Some of them now come with 7 frames and an inbuilt feeder. Cut the inbuilt feeder out and you've got an 8 frame nuke. So one of the larger nukes will work. And something I've missed off this list actually is a queen excluder. Now you'd think, why on earth do you need a queen excluder? Because that's what you put on before you add a super. Well, actually this is an excluder that goes on the floor. So it's floor, queen excluder, brood box, and then pop the swarm into the brood box. The reason for the excluder is, as I've already mentioned, swarms are flighty, and it's not uncommon for a hived swarm the following day to say, nah, we're not going to settle here, and take off. By using an excluder, you are going to keep the queen in that colony, and the swarm will say, ooh, hang on a minute, we've made a mistake here, we've left Her Majesty behind, and they'll go back to the hive. So that excluder can save you a great deal of hassle. Now, the Pagden artificial swarm. Hello Morag, nice to see you. You threw me in a right panic, I'll tell you, girl. Anyway, Pagden. This is the classic, really. You take the roof, the supers, the queen excluder off and place the old hive with the floor and the crown board more than 1 metre to one side. Now, you'll remember that we've talked about the magic rule in beekeeping, which is less than 3 feet or more than 3 miles, yeah? Everybody's remember that bit? Well, there is one major exception to that rule, and it is if you're a science fiction enthusiast or you've read a bit of science fiction, you might have come across the situation where the poor person is given a mind wipe. And that's what happens with a swarm. It's quite bizarre. In the morning, they know exactly where home is and they will obey the 3 feet rule. In the afternoon, once they've swarmed, they have no memory of that hive location. You can actually hive that swarm right next to its parent stand and it will ignore the old hive. It will reorientate on the hive that you've just put them into. It's quite bizarre, but it's also extremely useful. So, having moved everything, the parent hive's been moved 1 metre to one side. Then you put new floor and brood box with frames, foundation and or drawn comb on the original site. Remove 2 frames from the centre to create a gap. And inspect the old brood box and find the queen. And that is the sentence that throws people into an absolute tizzy. This business of finding the queen. I'm going to come back to that later on, because that really requires a bit of time spent on it. Place her on a frame with unsealed brood in the gap in the new box. Ensure there are no queen cells on this frame. Note if the queen is on the only frame with queen cells or the best queen cells, move the queen to a different frame so that those queen cells can be retained. Return to the old colony with the eggs, brood and nurse bees and inspect the colony for queen cells. Select a nice large queen cell and leave it in place in the centre of the brood. Carefully close up the gap, place 2 spare frames at the outer edges, replace the crown board and roof. Now, at that point, you've got several options. If you want to make increase, bearing in mind you've already got the swarm, so your 1 colony has now become 2, you could perfectly easily take a nucleus off your original parent stock. Just a thought. If you're not going to take a nucleus, this is the point at which you knock down all the queen cells apart from the one that you've selected, so that there is no risk of them casting. Okay? After 6 or 7 days, relocate the old brood containing hive more than 1 metre to the other side of the queen containing hive. Newly flying foraging bees trying to return to the old hive will drift to the new one, thus adding to the numbers of the artificial swarm. And that's it. So this is actually addressing the parent stock. Now, I'm now going to show you a silent video which was on Cinefilm, and I got it digitalized, and one of the things you might want to ponder, it's almost 100 years old, this film, is look at what the beekeepers are wearing. I mean, we all dress in spacesuits these days with you know, Velcro and zips and what have you. Just have a look at what these guys are wearing. I need to go to screen share, don't I? The box that the gentleman has got his hands on is something very rarely seen these days. It's a section crate, and each of those little boxes is 4 inches by 4 inches square, and inside a little sheet of foundation, and the bees used to fill those boxes out, and that is how people got round the extraction problem back in the day. It was all comb honey, and you read if you read some of the old beekeeping books, like Manley, for example, who was writing in the 1930s, they'll tell you there, especially in Ireland, colonies producing quite literally hundreds of sections per colony. It was massive, massive business. Okay, here we go. I think that's trying to say lime flow, actually. He's checking the weight of the hive. Clover. That's definitely lime. Willow herb. There's the metal spacers at the ends. They were made out of tin plate and they were like little razors. They used to cut my fingers, something terrible. I used to have to take them off to extract the frames. Sealed queen cell. Before collecting swarm, remember to plug hole in skep. Here we go. That's a nice swarm. There's your stone. And these are the fanning bees that I was telling you about on the sides of the skep. Parent hive off to one side. New hive on the old location. Foundation. Excluder. He's added the super and the house bees to the new hive, and he's now going to hive the swarm. And this was the classic way it used to be done: run them up a board, because it was the only chance that a lot of people had to actually find the queen or see the queen. That is a cracker of a swarm, actually. And there she is. You imagine having all that kit set up and you couldn't find the queen, the film running. Any old box will do. So there you go. Beekeeping in the 1930s. And isn't it extraordinary how they are dressed? So, before I move on to the Demaree, I'll call a 5-minute break and we will resume at 2 minutes, 12, goodness sake, can't count, 12 minutes past 4. I'll just add actually that that bit of the 30s that we watched was part 3. There's 5 parts in total. And they are all up on YouTube if you want to see the rest of them. It's reading a text from a certain person. Oh dear. Talk about stress. Alright. Tesco's maybe saying there's not a naughty step, but I'm telling you there is.
I know. I can't believe I did that. I even had it written down in my diary and everything. Really sorry. I know. Oh. What can I say?
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing. I know. How did you manage to get another Zoom meeting fixed up?
Let's just say it was a little bit frantic for a few minutes
Yeah.
and leave it there. Anyway, no harm done. I'm recording anyway, same as I did last week, so it'll be up. It'll be up on YouTube later on today.
Cool.
Okay, Demery is another way of treating a swarmy stock, and you can either leave the parent brood box on the bottom of the colony and put the swarm in another brood box on top of the supers with an excluder, obviously. So your colony would be brood box, excluder, 2-3 supers, excluder, and then another brood box. You would also fit a little entrance, so you would have a run of wood, 8mm, plenty thick enough, with a little entrance, and the parent stock with the cells can sit on top, or you can put the swarm on top. Some people do it one way, some people do it the other. And you have, for a period of time, a 2-queen colony until such time as your virgin has mated and is laying and you are happy with the outcome, in which case you can either take the swarm away and make it into a second colony, or you can kill the old queen, unite the two lots back together, and you've got a nice strong colony that would be in fine fettle to go to the heather. Now, before we move on to queen finding, a cautionary word about swarms. It's best practice not to bring a strange swarm into your home apiary. Disease is something we'll cover next week, but it is a disease precaution. In other words, swarms need to be treated with some suspicion, and they're best kept isolated until you are perfectly confident that they're clean and healthy. It just makes sense not to bring problems that are avoidable into your home apiary. The other thing you need to be aware of is, because they are from goodness knows where, you have no idea what the temperament of those bees is going to be. Swarms, usually by the nature of them, are very placid. They're also full of honey because they load up the stores before they leave, and people want to feed them to get them drawing out the foundation as soon as possible. I would suggest you it's a better idea to wait 3-4 days before you give them a feed, and that gives them a chance to use up all the honey that they've taken with them. And if there are any nasties in that honey, it's also a chance for them to get used up, and increases your chance of them being a clean colony. So be aware, disease is a problem, temperament may be a problem, and another thing when you get called to collect a swarm is you don't know how long they've been there. If they are grumpy because they've been hanging around for maybe 3-4 days, don't go waltzing into the middle of them without a veil on, is my top tip. What else can I say about collecting swarms? Oh, something else just came to me and is gone. Never mind, it'll come back. Right, so this classic statement of find the queen and then, and that is a massive blocker for a lot of people. So my first advice to you is this: find somebody who's got a decent number of colonies, and by decent number I mean, you know, sort of 8, 9, 10 upwards, and ask them if they will teach you how to find queens. It's one of these really odd things. Once you have been shown where eggs are on a frame, and you learn to tilt the frame so that the sun can get down, the light can get down to the bottom of the cell, you'll never have bother finding eggs again. Once your eye is tuned in, it's in for life. And before I forget, when you're looking for eggs, learn to automatically turn so that the sun is over your shoulder. So you're not trying to look into a cell with the sun at you, straight towards you, because that glare is cutting down your chances of seeing the eggs. Turn round so the light is behind you. The thing about finding queens is once you get your eye tuned in, you will never ever lose it. It's with you for life. And I will say publicly a very sincere thanks to Mrs. Tom, who was up in the outer reaches of Aberdeenshire, and she took the time and the kindness to take me through 20 plus stocks and teach me how to find queens. So credit where credit's due. Long since gone to the big hive in the sky, unfortunately, but she was a lovely lady. Now, the odds really are against you when it comes to queen finding, but it could be as high as 70,000 to 1. So, how can we help ourselves? Well, the easiest thing to do is quite literally pick the problem up and walk away with it. Let's assume, for simplicity, that the queen is in a single brood box. If you plonk the supers on the roof, pick up the floor and the brood box and walk away 50 yards, most of the flying bees, as you start to go through the combs, will fly back to the parent site. So you've immediately got rid of the bulk of the bees. You're left with the house bees in that brood box, and that's a big help. Once you've been through the combs once and not found her, then you can start to get even more clever. Now, people will tell you that the brood is always in danger of being chilled, which is true to a point. But if it's a reasonable day, brood will come to very little harm if it's outside the colony for a half hour. You can go through the combs again looking for her, but bear in mind she might have dropped off or gone to the wall or the floor, and or she can be jumping from comb to comb and just staying one comb ahead of you. Queens do not like daylight. Okay? So this is where you can get a bit clever. In your national brood box you've got 11 frames. Check very, very carefully 5 of them and lean them against the side of the brood box. That leaves you 6. Set them in the brood box in pairs, and the first pair wants to be a couple of inches away from the side wall, then another 3-4 inches in the next pair, and another 3-4 inches, and your last pair. go and do something else for 20 minutes. The reason I say go and do something else is it gives the queen time to move from wherever she is back into the darkness. And there's only 3 dark places now in that brood box, and that is between set 1, set 2 and set 3 of your combs. So you've reduced the probability of where she is to 6 faces. And I'll almost guarantee you that after 20 minutes she will be in between one of those sets of combs. And that is your best chance of finding her. Once you've found her, you can start an artificial swarm, or you can put her in a nucleus and allow both halves of the situation. Sorry, I should say in this scenario you don't actually have a swarm. You have possibly seen queen cells and you're wanting to do an artificial swarm, in which case you can find the queen and have her with a couple of frames of brood in an empty brood box, and then the remaining combs go into another brood box with 1 queen cell, preferably an open queen cell, because that gives the bees time to settle down a bit, and it also delays the time taken for that virgin to emerge, and that in turn allows the colony to sort of settle down from swarming fever. That is my advice when it comes to queen finding. It's not guaranteed, obviously, but it certainly changes the odds dramatically in your favour, which is what you need. We've done that. Tips and tricks, yes, we've done basically covered them. Take the brood box for the walk, and then pair up the combs. Quality combs, yes, this is another point. When you've got combs which have got a bit ragged and they've got holes in them, they can be a damn nuisance when it comes to queen finding, because she not only could pop through the hole in the comb from side A to side B, she could also actually sit in the hole and you won't see her. So good quality combs are a big help. Marking the queen in spring is a terrific thing to do, because it greatly helps with your queen finding when you are in the pressure cooker of having a swarmy colony on your hands. And it increases your confidence as well, I suspect, quite a lot. Clipping queens, it's been done for donkey's years, but it's still slightly controversial, because people say you're mutilating the queen, you're hurting her. Well, you're not hurting her for sure, because she's got no nerves in the wing. Losing the queen, not the swarm, I think is preferable. I'd far rather inspect and find I've got queen cells, no queen, and deal with the swarm, as opposed to having a swarm taking to the wing and going off and being a damn nuisance at the airport or wherever. Your cell, queen cells are sealed on day 8. Now, people say that bees won't swarm until the cell's sealed. It's the old classic, bees do nothing invariably. They may well swarm on an open cell. Certainly if you keep knocking out sealed queen cells thinking that you can stop them from swarming, they will swarm on an open cell. That is guaranteed. The virgin will emerge on day 16, and if the bees are at the point where the weather's been grotty and they've been hanging fire, they will trap that virgin, keep her prisoner until the swarm is actually able to go, and then they'll let that virgin go. And you may actually end up with casts at that point. So a clipped queen buys you time. Not a lot of time, about 3 days, but still that 3 days can make the difference between sorting things out and not sorting things out. Unclipped, you really need to be inspecting every 7 days. Charge cup to swarm can be as little as 4 days. With your clipped queen lost, you've got 6 to 8 days before they start to swarm, to cast. So you are buying yourself some time. And if the weather is bad, that time can be extremely useful. And we've talked about pairing the combs. And I still can't remember what the other thing I was going to mention about swarms. It's gone. Right folks, that is swarming covered. I hope it's been of some help. I'm just going to switch off the recording at this point.